I'm keeping this video fairly brief and hope that way more people will watch it. There's a longer version, but this one focuses on the key points. I'm going to show you that the potential outlook for civilization should be tremendously optimistic, more so than you will hear almost anywhere else or even imagine is possible. The future can be, with any luck at all, simply astounding and virtually limitless. I wouldn't have felt confident to make this prediction even 20 years ago, but a number of things have changed dramatically, which I'll explain. This single, positive message may be the most important thing that I hope you'll remember. Almost every other depiction of the future that we hear about, fiction or otherwise, is pretty dark and depressing. And these negative predictions have to lower our sense of hope and our collective attitudes, which undermine society. I want to radically change this negative point of view. Notice that I'm using the words should and could. This is a central point. It is absolutely true that we should be able to have this amazing future, and I'll be explaining why. But at the same time, I'm also as pessimistic as anyone about the way things are going right now and if we'll get through all these existential challenges. Global warming, nuclear war, extreme wealth disparity, growing anti-political movements. We live in very fraught times. So, how do my conflicting views of optimism and pessimism make any sense? The truth is that we have alternative possible futures, and these can turn out radically differently depending on what we do. This is certainly not a new idea, but the difference in what I'm saying is that this future of endless promise has actually become attainable. In fact, it would be nearly guaranteed if we ourselves don't ruin it. This is the first time in human history where that has become true. I'll show you how it is almost entirely in our control whether our future becomes a heaven or a hell. And there are some surprisingly simple and obvious choices that we can make to have it go one way or the other. But first, I want people to actually spend a bit of time thinking about what this means and what we'd be giving up if we make the wrong choices. I want you to focus on the positives of what could be and not just the negatives. If I give you a hint of what this boundless future might look like and show you how it has become a foreseeable reality, it may provide some additional motivation for us to act differently and work towards making it happen. I will explain all this to you. It's very simple and straightforward when you put the basic pieces together. Okay, so where does my optimism come from? Think about this. We are just at the beginning of a new and amazing chapter in human history, specifically with science, medicine, and technology that's like nothing we've ever experienced before. There have been certain particular breakthroughs in both science and medicine just in the last couple of decades or so that have made certain predictions possible. We've crossed over a threshold, and this changes everything. Again, I want to keep this video short, so it'll be easier if you just listen to the general explanation for right now with an open mind. We can get into more detail later with questions and challenges. So, with medicine, for example, I think we can confidently predict that nearly every human illness will very likely either be curable, or at least very treatable, within the next 50 to 100 years. Imagine how monumentally different our world would be if this were true. Or, let's consider something completely different. Catastrophic natural disasters that could actually come close to, if not end civilization, like giant asteroids or another ice age. In each of these cases as well, science has progressed to the point where we'll be able to manage almost any of these that we can think of within the foreseeable future. With these types of apocalyptic events, it all depends on when they occur. If a giant asteroid were headed towards Earth, let's say within 10 years, we'd be finished. But in 100 years, we'll probably be able to easily detect it in enough time to deflect or destroy it. What about an ice age? Well, as long as we can foresee it happening in time, then within 200 years or less, we'd certainly be able to build underground cities, if nothing else. In fact, you can name any type of disaster, and I'll probably be able to give you reasonable strategies for how we might be able to deal with it in the future. And remember that these kind of catastrophic events are extremely rare. So, if we can make it through these next 1 or 200 years, we'll be pretty much home free. We'll even be able to solve our climate crisis eventually, as long as we have enough time to develop the technology to confront it. It will certainly meet us part of the way. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, droughts, pandemics. We'll gain much greater mastery over them as well within the next 100 years or so. And with these off the table, that means that, with any luck at all, our future could be limitless. All we have to do is not screw it up. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that I've been right up until now. That with science, medicine, and technology, we've crossed over a threshold into this new era of potentially limitless progress. But what about right now? Where does that leave us with our current major crises, like a collapse of Earth's climate regulation or a nuclear Armageddon? What can we do about these? Am I offering an answer? No, I'm not. I am very worried about where we are on all these issues, as many of us are. The outlook is not encouraging at all. And there's no magic solution that's going to come out of nowhere. We are living in very precarious times. Global warming, nuclear war. Nothing about these situations will change in the foreseeable future. So then, what's my point? It sounds like I'm offering no better hope than what we have already. But this video is not supposed to be about the present. That is what it is. And anyway, I'm not telling you anything that we don't already know. Instead, by explaining the awesome and inspiring possibilities that are tantalizingly within our grasp, perhaps this video will give us additional motivation to change our behavior now. But I'm a realist, and I don't expect that it will. We'll continue to take incredible risks, and we'll either make it through these or we won't. As they say, thoughts and prayers. I just want you to have a clearer grasp of the situation we are in. There is a way, though, that I think we can change, and that's a major reason why I decided to make this video. But I'll get to that towards the end. And I'll add one other final positive thought on this subject. Technology is a double-edged sword. The same tools that might destroy us are also the ones that could be our eventual salvation. They are both part of one package. We couldn't have had one without the other. You want to cure human illness, divert the next giant asteroid, or be ready for the next ice age. Then this is the only way that we could get there. It's a minefield. But I think it'll be worth it if we can make it to the other side. What's the outlook for our social, political, and economic problems? Wealth inequality, corrupt government, some kind of dystopia. This part of our future looks bleak. But even here, I can offer you a more positive view. Social, political, and economic improvements have been happening all throughout human history. It's just a much slower and irregular process, which can take decades and even centuries. So we need to have a different perspective and a lot of patience. If you look too closely at the timeline, it can feel like there's almost no progress at all. But that's simply not true. Think about where we were hundreds of years ago and farther back. From cavemen to pharaohs to the Middle Ages, kings and serfs. Throughout almost all our history, you were either part of the royal and privileged class, or you'd most likely have been a peasant, living in abject poverty. The key thing to remember is, over the long haul, human civilization has made incredible progress. Life has improved more and more over the centuries for the vast majority of people. Yes, there are still many poor people, but being poor now, for many, is still much better than it was even 100 years ago. Most people today have cell phones. We've developed global vaccines for many diseases that have saved many millions of lives. Or look at China for an amazing example of economic transformation. A lot of reform also happens decade by decade, mostly for the better and sometimes worse. But in my lifetime alone, I've seen a lot of progressive changes that seemed unimaginable. gay marriage, desegregation. There are endless examples. We do change. In the long run, the trend has always been towards progress. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I do believe that capitalism and our system of government have very deep problems right now that have to be addressed. And we are much too complacent about this. Ignoring these problems leads to dramatic unfairness and is primarily what contributes to social unrest. But in order to make genuine progress, I think we will need some very thorough plans. And we will probably have to have some form of peaceful and orderly revolution. The people who benefit most from this system won't want to give it up, no matter how much sense it would make. I wanted to show you how close we are to achieving this incredible future, and that after all the progress we've made, we are pretty much the only ones who could alter its course. So, what is it that could go wrong? I'll divide this into two categories, which will clarify the situation. The first I'll call unavoidable mistakes. These are things like nuclear devastation, extreme global warming, or a worldwide deadly disease created in the lab. I call them unavoidable because, realistically, we're not going to change enough to take these risks off the table, despite the warnings, and no matter how awful the outcome. For instance, we've known for decades what the devastating results of a nuclear war would be, but that still hasn't stopped us. Of course, we should continue to try our best to eliminate these threats, but otherwise, we'll just have to cross our fingers. This is what I really want to talk about. I call these avoidable mistakes because they are behaviors we absolutely could change if we somehow chose to. They clearly serve no positive purpose whatsoever, greatly threaten our civilization, and avoiding the threats would be easy. I'm talking specifically about the growing movements against government, science, and capitalism, and the most extreme people who want to completely dismantle the existing power structure. This is genuinely threatening to get out of control. We do have to get on top of it somehow. I know, of course, that these people would be the hardest to convince about anything, but it's desperately important, and the logic is so simple that I have to try. As many problems as society has, in order to make positive changes, we have to have some kind of plan. As the saying goes, always look before you leap. But the current revolutionary fringe has no plan at all. It's understandable frustration, but there's no thinking past that. And this would end in absolute disaster. Anarchy will only lead to a power vacuum, which will get filled by the worst people. And this would be guaranteed to put us back centuries, or worse, and once Humpty Dumpty is broken, there's no going back. There are absolutely big problems in society that we have to deal with. And we're not doing enough, but mindless leadership is not the answer. And we should realize that for all that is legitimately bad in the world, it's also this system that's given us all the amazing things that we do have. We should try to fix what we have and build on it. So, what can we do about this? If this video has made some sense to you, then the great news is that my solution couldn't be easier. The most likely way that things will get better in the future is to simply allow civilization to progress as it has been doing all along. I'm not saying we shouldn't protest or get involved and active. In fact, just the opposite. Society has always progressed because of people speaking out. But these were all focused on specific issues. We weren't trying to massively disrupt society. Progress is made a step at a time. So, we just need to have a more calm, confident feeling overall and believe that things will probably work themselves out. That's the best that we can do and will give us the best chance that they will. The advancement of civilization is actually going pretty well. And then, stop being so melodramatic. Just mellow out. We should spend the majority of our time simply enjoying our lives. We only live once. Watch a football game. Have a barbecue. Hang out with friends. Spend time with family. But for God's sake, just relax. What could be easier than that?
Let it be, let it be. We're there.